Again, everyone, welcome to the Union Day. This is like one of the most exciting Union Days probably ever because we're talking about something really, really like new, exciting development. But before we get into it, here's the agenda for today. We're going to do like a quick introduction of what is really happening with the Google Fiber's workers petition. And then we will actually, super exciting thing today is that we actually have a lot of the organizing committee members from Google Fiber being on the panel today, and we will have a very lively discussion with them, learning more about like their organizing experience in the workplace. And then after that, obviously we'll have a Q&A section, so get your questions ready. And the last one is motion to awoo. We will talk about that more when we get to that part. So introduction. So it's just about myself. Hi, my name is Lou. I am a full-time software engineer in New York City. And I am a union steward and also a member of the New York Organizing Committee. And apart from that, I also work with others in the union on a working group, which is about like collaboration between full-time employees and TVCs in the union, especially on TVC issues. We run something called the Tvc Office Hours, which I will talk about a little bit more towards the end of the meeting. All right, so what you're seeing here on this picture is actually a super majority of the workers at BDS Connected Solutions, which is a subcontractor for Google Fiber in Kansas City, Missouri. So the reason we are all here today is that they have filed a petition with NLRB to win union recognition and bargaining power on the job. 10 out of the 11 workers on the job are already in the workplace are already dues-paying members of Union-CWA, and we are now demanding formal recognition through a National Labor Relations Board election. The election has already started on March 4th, which is like about 2 weeks ago. And when they win their election, which should end on the March 24th, which is very like coming up this week, there will be the first bargaining unit for us, for Union-CWA in this union. All right, cool. So you might be wondering about like, what is a bargaining union and how is this significant? How is this different from all the different other campaigns that we have run so far? So our union organizes in two different ways. Like one of them is called non-contract campaigns. And up to this point, like we actually have been mostly doing campaigns that are non-contract or non-majority campaigns. And we actually have been really successful at making changes and getting material benefits for our coworkers. Like for instance, the Modus data center TVCs organized last year to win back $200,000 in terms of bonuses for their coworkers and for themselves. Last year, we also had the international interns organizing to win back their housing stipends they were denied to. And recently, very recently this year, or really in the past 2 weeks, the cloud tech support engineers are also organizing around unexpected layoffs they're facing. So in any of the previous cases, we actually don't have like a majority of the workers organizing together. But when workers organize together, we do yield like very powerful results, as you just heard. But in this case, we are actually in the case of Google Fiber, this is very different, and this is what we call like a contract campaign. So basically, when in a particular workplace, when the set of workers in that workplace reach a majority or supermajority of union members, we can take the additional step of filing for legal recognition with NLRB. So this will trigger kind of a union election, which is what's happening right now. And once the majority of the workers vote yes, the company will have to legally recognize them as a union and then have to negotiate directly with the workers over pretty much all the aspects in the workplace, such as wages, bonuses, vacations, safety protections, layoffs, benefits, etc., etc., etc. And you may have seen on the news recently about union elections in a lot of the Starbucks stores across the US, for instance. And that is very similar to this. So at the end of the bargaining process, both our union and the employer, and in this case, BDS Solutions and also Google, will enter into a contract which is legally binding. What that means is that the employer cannot make any changes to the contract without bargaining with the workers, which really gives the workers a lot of power in the workplace. And in this case, in the case of Google Fiber, the TVCs who operate 2 Google Fiber spaces in Kansas City are the first group of AWU members to reach a supermajority in the workplace, and they're going through a contract campaign. So this is why this is super exciting. It's a first for our union. And that's also why we wanted to bring everyone in together today to hear from the workers who are organizing and learn from their experiences. And obviously, we would love to replicate this success across US and Canada to really shift the power at Alphabet from the bosses into our hands, into the hands of the people who make Alphabet run, the workers. All right, so here we're just going to meet the panelists and let them have a quick self-introduction. So I'm just going to call on each one. So Aris,
absolutely.
Could you go,
so my name is Aris. I work for Google Fiber, well, for BDS Connected Solutions, representing Google Fiber in Kansas City. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. Excited to be here, everybody.
Hey, my name is Emrys. I use either they or he pronouns. And I work at the Westport Google Fiber location as one of the core organizers. So super excited to share everything with you guys.
All right, last but not least, Michael.
Hey guys, I'm Mike. I am one of the BDS Connected Solutions Google Fiber reps as well. Also in Westport with these two. Very excited to be here, you guys.
All right, great. So thank you for being on the panel today. I'm super excited to hear about your story. So first, to begin with, I think my first question is what was your workplace like? Was there any specific reason that you decided to organize and run for, go for a recognition campaign? So, and this is for everyone.
Yeah, I can kind of start us off. So, I mean, our workplace saw a lot of changes with COVID. There were closures, there was reopenings, safety precautions being taken away, promises of bonuses, promises of raises before COVID that didn't get implemented post-COVID. So that's kind of a general overview. I can let Mike or Emrys talk about other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point to hit on the broken promises aspect of things. People were thinking about leaving, times were getting tough, people were looking elsewhere, and they, dangled a carrot in front of us, basically. A lot of things with our COVID protections, our hours, everything just seemed inconsistent.
Yeah, since I started a year and a half ago, the people who work there have asked for a lot of things, like to not get rid of a lot of the COVID precautions. We've asked for raises, hazard pay, stuff like that. And essentially we've been ignored, not listened to. So that was a big driving point to why we started doing this. We all just kind of got fed up with not being taken seriously.
Okay, thanks everyone. And it sounds like these are extremely good reasons to organize your workplace. So I have a quick question, which is, hello? Hi. Oh, hi, sorry. I think I was. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. So I guess the next question is obviously a very important part for any campaign, not just contractual campaign, is really building up an organizing committee. And I'm wondering in the case of BDS, what was the process for that look like? Aris, could you answer that question?
Yeah, so this whole process started, in terms of serious organizing, probably in October of last year. So there was, I was familiar with, the AWU, but I happened to get curious and kind of see what they were up to. And there was a pay parity petition going on. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. That would really help out a lot of us. So I kind of started talking to everybody about it. I was like, hey, we should totally sign this. anyways, we were back and forth, and so that kind of started the ball rolling. And then, there was pretty much unanimous support for, getting this signed. So sort of the next logical step for me was like, heck, we could actually just unionize. Like, why not? Let's do this. So, I started talking to everybody, seeing how everybody felt about it. And I mean, there are 12 people that work between the two stores. So, I mean, it was kind of a handful. The rest of the organizing committee kind of just offered support. They were like, hey, like, do you need any help? Anything like that? And, being able to have the solidarity and support from my coworkers to actually like get the ball rolling was really, really inspiring. So that's kind of how that started.
So Aris, the next question would be like, what was the moment like when you were like, oh, I think we're ready to file for petition, file for union recognition?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll be honest, like when I started the process, I had really very little knowledge of what I was getting into. All of us did. We knew, unionizing was something we could do, but we weren't really sure how to go about it. But we had an organizing committee. We had, everyone in support of it, or mostly in support of it. So I joined the AWU. I introduced myself, sort of, here's what we're doing. Then we had actually Anne reach out to us, and she was like, hey, this is awesome. I'd love to talk. And so she kind of chatted, and she was like, so this is kind of the process that we would need to do. And I was like, oh, great. We already have an organizing committee. And she's like, oh, okay. Well, so then we'll need to get support from everybody. And I was like, oh yeah, we already have that. We like signed this little petition thingy that we've been like distributing amongst each other. And she was like, oh, okay. And she was like, oh, let's get the next step of the process rolling, and we did. And it has gone very well so far.
All right. So, wow, that's exciting. So the next question is really like, what has it been like since fighting for the election? Has there been any changes that you notice in the workplace? How has the bosses reacted to the news? So I guess this question will go to Amaris and Mike. Amaris, could you go first?
So since we filed filed to unionize back in January, our workplace has actually gotten really tense. We faced a lot of opposition from one of our supervisors, where like nobody would mention the word union for a while, but she had gotten really like passive aggressive with a lot of us. And then toward a little bit after that, she admitted like, yeah, I was really angry that like you guys did this. Nobody told me about it. Rules for a little bit got a lot stricter in what we were and weren't allowed to do and the things that we got written up for. So, right, it's gotten a little bit better since then, but after we filed to unionize, there was definitely a lot of tension and a lot of what felt like retaliation for that.
So Mike, like, did the workers like do anything to counteract like this, I don't know, passive aggressiveness from the company and from the management?
Yeah, I mean, on a day-to-day basis, we just made sure we let each other know we had each other's backs, and we would always touch base, like, am I crazy, or is that passive aggressive and like intentionally tense? Because that seemed to be kind of a running theme for a while. We got a little bit less communication for a while, especially from like our managers and our upper managers. There was a period of silence, and like when you're making big changes and organizational efforts and stuff like that, I mean, the silence can be deafening. But after a while, especially as we've made progress, things have the air's cleared a little bit. The end is, I mean, not the end, obviously, but the next step is in sight. But yeah, it's slowly getting better.
Yeah, and I also heard like from talking with y'all, like there has been like very specific actions such as wearing red on Thursdays, I assume. Could you talk a little bit about like what are the actions you took during that period?
Oh yeah, I mean, we like I said, we always keeping in contact, always making sure everybody knows what's going on, and putting efforts forward, like like you mentioned, everybody wearing red. We've got these slick wristbands. We've got everything to let people know that we're in solidarity with each other, and you know as I think Sarah mentioned, it's kind of like a shield. If they see you're wearing the wristband, they don't screw with you so much.
Wow, that's amazing. So next up, we're actually going to play an audio clip or really a video clip to you. And this is actually related to what we were just talking about. So almost in every case, when workers are running a campaign, the bosses are also running an anti-campaign at the same time. And a lot of times, like these strategies are also like just a very common across different workplaces and whatnot. So in the next clip, what we're going to hear is actually something called captive audience meeting. So what is a captive audience meeting? It's really, a lot of times what the management can do when they are facing a union campaign is that they can call like a mandatory meeting that everybody has to attend. And in those meetings, they will be talking about like all of the typical anti-union talking points and everything. So we are actually going to hear a real recording in Google Fiber, and we will hear like the interaction between the management and the workers. Sarah, could you play?
The thing is, though, with it being withdrawn, you guys definitely can have more conversations with me.
Respectfully, we're not withdrawing the union petition.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just providing the information because when people make decisions, it's good to have all information. I don't believe that, I'm trying to restrict you guys from getting information. Just trying to provide it. Are you telling me you would like me to stop discussing that slide, or would you like me to continue to provide the information?
No, we've just heard a lot about what's going to happen if we withdraw, and we've been to a lot of these meetings under the guise of, oh, we're giving you information.
Once a week.
And it just feels like, we have information. It just feels like you guys don't think we know what it is we're doing, or we're not capable of making decisions. And we understand that it would be your preference for us to not unionize. However, I've never met Marco until we filed the petition to unionize. I've worked here a year and a half and I've never been listened to at all. So really, you guys showing up here once a week, the only thing it's accomplishing is making us realize that we do need to unionize, because this is the only way we get listened to.
Okay. I can't speak to what happened before I started with the company.
Yeah, I know you're.
I haven't been contacted regarding any situation. I haven't seen anything come in directly to our HR department, so I can't speak to what conversations you did or did not have with local management.
All right, so that was fun to listen to, and I'm really amazed by how you all push back on these talking points. So I think, yeah, so Amaris, so like the question is like, when you heard like there's going to be this captive meeting, like especially like based on how you all reacted to it so well, I'm wondering, did you do any prep work when you heard about this, and what did you do to build up solidarity and ensure like you have a good response to these anti-union tactics?
Yeah, absolutely. So every time they've announced a captive audience meeting, it's been like the night before the meeting, very like short notice, happening tomorrow. The first one, the national operations manager for BDS, Marco, was coming in to talk to everybody before our shift started. And in his words, anyone who wanted to like show up at 8 a.m. could show up for the meeting. Otherwise, he'd be pulling us like individually or in pairs throughout the day. So a super majority of us, we all got on a Zoom call the night before the meeting to talk about, to run through some like inoculation points, like why are they here now? What are they trying to accomplish from this? We decided we were all going to, like, a majority of us decided we were going to show up at 8 a.m. or 8:30 for the meeting. We were going to wear our red AWU union shirts. We were going to wear our red union wristbands. We presented them with yet another petition for neutrality to simply recognize the union. And we went there all in a big group just to make sure that nobody was singled out. We informed everyone of some of the like talking points that they might have and how to refute them. And then we got there the next morning, went to the captive audience meeting, and it did not go well for management.
Yeah, after hearing that clip, I think I can fully agree with the last part that it didn't go well for the management. But also at the same time, I think, this campaign has been going on for a while. It's always like any other campaign, workplace campaigns we're running, there's always a long process. And I think I personally, in my own organizing history, I've seen people getting discouraged because it might get too long. Like sometimes people don't see like immediate results, and there's like a lot of doubts. There are like people are wondering about like, are we actually going to win? I'm wondering, like in your case, in Google Fiber and in BDS, did you see any coworkers like that? And when you are talking to discouraged coworkers, like what did you do to really, bring up the spirit and really help them help them have more energy to go on with the campaign and make sure like this does not the message does not get lost in all the boss campaigns. So Mike, could you actually talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Making sure that everybody has their own real version of the realization of the fact that if they are going this far to try to convince us, if they're bringing in all these points, imagine what they stand to lose. Imagine what they're, so afraid of. And, it had been kind of obvious for a while that we were being ignored. And it was easy to see that, all of a sudden paying attention to people, wanting to give them information, was an incredibly see-through attempt to, dissuade people in a last-ditch effort, and just making sure people know that, because these things can be confusing, they can come out of nowhere, and they can be kind of intimidating. Just meeting with people, talking to them, are you worried about this? Are you excited? What are you gonna say? What do you think they're gonna say? Just making sure that there's a consensus.
And how frequently did you have these conversations with your coworkers? I think this is a question for Australia or anyone who wants to answer.
Whenever possible, really. We make sure to reach out to our reps every day. We, make sure we understand what they're going through, that they know we understand what they're going through, and just assuaging any doubt that anybody might have, because it can be hard in a big, long, drawn out effort like this.
Yeah, and it's definitely hard work. Sometimes this feels like a second job, but it's so worth it, because just the amount of solidarity and amount of people I have your back, and not even just with the union stuff, just in everything else, just the increase of it shows, and it makes coming to work so much better, knowing that your coworkers have your back.
Yeah, we make efforts every day to reach out to our coworkers. If we notice that they're acting a little bit irritated, or maybe they're not wearing their wristband, or they're being kind of distant, we all make efforts to check in every single day and say, hey, how are you doing? How do you feel? What do you need from us? And to make sure there's a sense of solidarity and community in the place that we work, just to make it easier on everyone, because nobody doing this is doing this alone.
Thank you all. That was so great to hear. And thank you for building up so much solidarity and rapport with your coworkers. I think that's really a key element in any campaign that we could be running. So, well, obviously, like getting into a union contract, ultimately it's about, improving the working conditions, whether it's pay or whether it's benefits or other things. And I'm just wondering, like so far, for this campaign, which has been underway for a few months, to my understanding, what are some of the concrete wins you have so far? Have you noticed anything like in terms of material conditions that has improved because of this campaign? So Amaris, could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so since we've started the campaign, we definitely have noticed a lot of actual changes have been made. Shortly after we filed the petition, we got N95 masks provided for every single employee. They finally started hiring more temporary workers to help us with a big conversion that was happening in Google Fiber. They increased starting wages for employees from $15 to $15.50, and they fixed the lights on the outside of the building that had been broken for the majority of the time I had been working there in the year and a half.
Wow, that's amazing. And thinking about this is only a few months of organizing so far, and you all have so much wins already. That's super exciting to hear. But also, obviously, this is not the end of the road, and we're still on the journey of unionization. And obviously, when we are recognized, we're actually going to ask for more and ask for better, more fair pay and conditions at work. So, Aris, could you talk a little bit about what are the next things that the workers are going to demand as a unit together?
Yeah, definitely. So there are some things that when we go to the bargaining table, we have to talk about just legally, which we're all stoked for, is talking about wages, talking about benefits, what we want to keep, what we want to change. We are going to talk more about, honestly, just having a seat at the table so that management and Google Fiber can't just make these sweeping changes and expect us all to sort of just keep up. We'll actually have a say in that. That's honestly the most exciting part about this.
Anything else to add? Mike, I saw that you seem to wanted to say something.
Oh, it's just, when your environment changes around you without any input or warning, so many times, I mean, just the idea that we might have some say in it is extremely exciting, which is why I kind of lit up there. That's definitely the best part about the whole thing.
That's awesome to hear. So, okay, so that's pretty much this is pretty much the end of the panel, but before we get to the Q&A section, there's actually another audio clip that we want you to hear, and I've listened to it myself already, and it's really amazing. And I just want everyone to pay attention to how much solidarity the workers are showing each other. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Like I said, the purpose of my visit out here is purely informational. When we get to the vote, whichever way you vote, we're still working together regardless of how it goes afterwards.
Yeah, that's already been decided.
Yeah, we've already all decided that we want a union. We wouldn't have signed cards if we weren't informed.
So what folks sometimes won't tell you that there's three parties involved. There's the employees. That's one party. One party is the company, management, right? And the other party is the union, which you can choose to have represent you or not.
We are the union.
Yeah, we are the union. I mean, we don't need the election. You guys could just recognize the union.
You're absolutely correct. So in the world of what we'll call third-party vendors, your company can decide it's no longer a value proposition for them to work in there, right? And they could say, we're not going to do Google Fiber anymore,
right.
As an example.
So
are you willing to put that in writing?
Yeah, are you saying that if we unionize, we're going to close?
No, not at all.
It sounds like you're insinuating.
Yeah.
No. See, I don't know how you heard that. Right? Well,
I heard it. Yeah,
If you unionize, like, it's perfectly within the rights of the client, not BDS, to say, well, we're going to go look for another vendor.
Right. But it is illegal to threaten.
I'm not
action.
threatening anybody. That wasn't a threat. If you perceive that as a threat.
I'm just making sure you're aware.
No, and I understand that.
So what we're asking for here is why we as a collective group decided to go through this process is so that those decisions aren't being made above our heads.
This negotiation will happen whether we're talking to Google or whether you guys are talking to Google.
The bottom line, we would like these negotiations to have more of our input here from the bottom line. If we have to employ representation, we will. I mean, that's why we're all sitting here wearing red meetings. We love the product. We love our jobs.
Helping people.
We like helping people, that sort of thing. We're excited for our election. We're excited to be formally recognized, and we appreciate you guys' time.
I don't know about you guys, but I always love hearing a good beatdown of the union busters, and you are so amazing. Like that's so amazing to hear. Okay, so now we are like the panel section of the meeting of Union Day is over, and we're moving to Q&A. And I'm sure like you are super excited to hear this, and I'm sure you all have like tons of questions. Eric.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Take it away.
It's been a real pleasure getting to be here and listen to your story. Super inspiring. I want to welcome anybody in attendance to go ahead and use the raise hand feature in Zoom if you want to line up to ask a question, or just type it in chat if you don't feel comfortable asking it out loud. I can relay it. So yeah, everyone feel free to open up with questions. I had one maybe myself to just kick off because something at the end of that clip really resonated with me, which was one of y'all saying that you like your jobs and you like your work, and that the reason you're unionizing isn't because you don't like your jobs, but in fact, it's because you like your jobs and you want better conditions. And I just wonder if you wanted to elaborate on that and how you have already seen your efforts and organizing together make the work itself and the workplace itself better beyond just an eventual contract.
Yeah, so when I had said that, it basically meant to convey, like, we love the product, we love the responsibilities of our job. It's very gratifying. It's, I've been here a while. It's coming up on 4 years now, and I've grown to appreciate being able to help people out, being, kind of responsible for, fixing things for people, getting things done for people. The whole job is great, and it used to be better. The relationship between management is what has kind of changed. These sort of sweeping changes, telling us same day that our bonuses were being cut, that basically they wouldn't be able to keep up with inflation. It's just kind of deteriorated over time. And, going forward, we're really looking forward to bringing that back to, the place it once was, if not better. That's kind of the most exciting part about it, is that, it was good before, then it was bad, but now it can be great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks. Lauren, you have your hand up?
So I know that for a lot of workplaces, it takes a long time to come together and do what you all were able to do. What are your strengths that you think enabled you to do what you did so quickly and so efficiently and so confidently? In those recordings, you're like, we have rights and you can't do that. So you want to try again? It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, we've been very lucky in the sense that, we're retail, we see each other every day. So we already have sort of a close-knit group. And just making sure like we're finding what is people's main driving shouldn't say complaints, but what agitates them about the job, what frustrates them at the job. Because if it was bad enough, they would have just left. We would have left. Like, there wouldn't be anybody to work there if the job was that bad. So it's, digging a little deeper sometimes, finding out why they're staying and what they want to see change. So, just always having each other's back, I think, is really, really important, especially for people who might be on the fence about this kind of stuff.
I think since there's usually only about 12-ish people working in the fiber space, I do think we have an advantage of only having to organize a dozen people, as opposed to, if we worked at like a Walmart with dozens or like over 100 employees. So I do think that's part of it, but honestly, I think for the most part, we just got kind of lucky with working with so many people who are already so well informed about unions and about workers' rights, and who are already so passionate about it. As one of the core organizers, I don't feel like I've had to do a ton of work to explain any of this to anyone. We've just work with a lot of really great, already like well-informed, intelligent people.
Great. Oliver asked a question in chat about kind of clarifying the timeline of your campaign and sort of how long it took between when you were signing cards and then how long it took between that and actually holding the vote. And if there was anything that the boss did to kind of delay that at all.
Yeah, so we all signed cards the night of January 3rd. And that pushed the election to sort of trigger the following day on the 4th. So the 4th was the official date of filing. So our union election started on March 4th with mail-in ballots. And it will conclude on the 25th at 2 p.m. when we actually count the votes and get an official yes or no, we have a union. And there were definitely delay tactics by the boss. The first petition we actually filed with the NLRB was to include Google Fiber specifically as a joint employer. They essentially responded saying, oh, you contacted the wrong bet, no other information. So we kind of knew that there was going to be a process of litigation, which was going to draw out the process longer if we tried to include them. So to sort of get our rights and get the legally backed union quicker, we decided to exclude them, refile with just BDS. And even so, there were delays. The lawyer they chose wouldn't respond to the NLRB except at the very end of the deadline. They would show up to court, kind of flip-flop on responses, but just making it more difficult to solidify the voting process. So we kind of expected that to happen. We just didn't know how long it was. So there was about, I would say we probably got delayed by about a month after we filed.
I remember Marco tried to delay giving the NLRB a list of like employees that would be eligible to vote. And he was like, I can't do that today. I need some kind of like extension. And the lawyer from the NLRB wasn't having it. They were like, it's 12 people. You can compile a list of 12 people. There's no way it like takes that long. There were also a lot of arguments. They tried to exclude the Zona Rosa location from the list of employees that would be in the union if we voted yes, which is also just another location in Kansas City. They tried a lot of things to kind of drag this out, but in the end, obviously, they're just delaying the inevitable. So.
Yeah, I actually have two
Lou, your hand is
questions.
up.
First one is more technical. So, Aries, you just mentioned about joint employment. Could you give a quick explanation of what is that, and how does that differ from like a typical, I guess, Google vendor employment situation?
So joint employment in the US is a very narrow description. Essentially, for joint employment process to go through for an employer to be considered a joint employer, I don't know all the legal ins and outs of it, but it's very, very specific. We do feel that Google Fiber is sort of a joint employer in this situation because they make decisions on what our hours are. They make decisions on how many people get hired. They don't specifically dictate what we get paid, but they give a labor budget. So BDS has to work within that labor budget, which they'll say again and again is, we can only do so much with it. So we do feel that Google Fiber is a joint employer, but that requires more litigation, more burden of proof, that we've sort of decided to leave by the wayside for now. And if we get to the bargaining table and BDS decides to pull the card that they can't do anything because of what Google Fiber is, because of how it's structured,
I think we can go to Jenny's question
go down that road
first, and then if we have time, I would love to ask another question.
Yeah, sure. Jenny asked in the chat, how do you convince your coworkers that forming a union will improve working conditions? And it sounds like y'all, once you started talking, discovered that you all already maybe shared a lot of the same thoughts, but still you have to start by taking the leap and having those conversations. So yeah, what was that like? And did you find anything in those early conversations that surprised you or gave you hope or challenged you?
I think one of the most important things, and also one of the most challenging, is that you have to debunk the really tired, repeated lies that companies try to feed you about unions. So personally, I think the first step is not convincing someone that unions are good. It's convincing someone that unions are not bad. Because as you guys have heard in those clips of the captive audience meetings, they all regurgitate these same talking points, which are blatant lies. They say the union is a third party. The union is not a third party. The union is the people working, and which is especially ironic given that we literally are third partied through BDS, but that whatever. And just you have to learn the language of the people you're kind of up against, and then you have to deconstruct that and explain why it's all reactionary nonsense, before you can kind of start trying to convince people that unionizing is a risk that should be taken and is worth it and good.
Yeah, and just sorry to bridge off Emrys there real quick. I mean, there were, definitely me and other people on the organizing committee, where we were, very informed on labor rights, at least as much as any lay person would be. But I mean, there was information that I didn't have the answer to. Sometimes people would ask me a question and I just wouldn't have the answer. So, having the resources of the AWU, having the resources of, other CWA members, Sarah and both. I mean, it was an incredible show of support, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without everyone else.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. Jeffrey, you've got your hand up.
Curious if there was
fire away.
anything that your coworkers like disagreed about that you had to like navigate on the way to filing for this election.
Not so much disagreements. I mean, honestly, the consensus was pretty much there for anyone who had been there for a while. The challenge was keeping everyone motivated, because some of those tactics really did start to wear on people. People did start to get a little bit, exhausted by the whole thing. And I know some people wanted to quit their jobs over it. Some people wanted to just get out, but keeping everybody on the level, saying like, I know this sucks, but we're really working towards something better here was possibly the main challenge, just because after a while that stuff really grates on you. A couple people were starting to lose their tempers, their patience, their resolve, but everybody miraculously pulled through. Everybody's got little disagreements, but for the most part, everybody's just on board for the larger project or the whole thing.
Great. Thanks so much. We'll wrap up the questions there. I'm sure if anyone has more, hey, we're in a union, which means we're talking to each other. So we can follow up with someone and get your questions answered afterwards. I'll hand it back over to Lou to wrap things up.
Yeah, totally. So thanks everyone for those really engaging questions, and thanks to all the panelists for this like really great conversation. So obviously we're all super excited to hear like how the election goes, and please know like we are all rooting for you. So for the other folks who, before we end the union dates, like for the other folks for the audience today, we do have an ask, which is getting your workplace organized. And I would say like getting your workplace organized can be about anything, like even if it's just like a common small issue around perf or any other thing, or among any kind of common grievances. We would like to see you taking action in your workplace and taking action in improving it. So if you're a union member, the best way to, if you have questions about how do I start this campaign or how do I start this effort, the best thing to do is actually going on the Discord server and going to the organizing help channel, post any questions there, and the experienced organizers and staff and other folks in the union will jump to that. And if you're not a member, we actually do have a form. Let me see. Yes, that Jenny just posted in the chat. Use that form to request a one-on-one with us, and we will get in touch with you shortly. And also at the same time, I kind of mentioned earlier that I also run with a few other folks in the union, something called the, oh yes, and thanks Jenny for that. Another thing is like, obviously, there are best practices around how to organize your workplace. And I think the best resources for that is actually the Code CWA training. It's typically held on the weekends. It has two different classes. Class 1 is about talking to your coworkers, and class 2 is about building an organizing committee, which are all things like you actually heard in action today. Also, apart from that, if you're a TVC worker in Alphabet and you're wondering about like where to start, we actually have something called the TVC Office Hours, which is something I personally run with a few other folks in the union. And this is something that we're like, it's more like an open forum for TVC issues. We have both TVC organizers and FTE members of the union as facilitators. And the next one is actually tomorrow, at 6 p.m. Pacific time and 9 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, and the next thing is really like, I'm sure a lot of people are super inspired today and thinking about what is the first step towards organizing your workplace. So I actually want to ask this question to our panelists today. Like, in your experience, since you are already so far along in your organizing process, but when you look back, what's the most important first step you can take? And feel free to just jump onto this.
Talking to your coworkers. I mean, that's the biggest thing. That's how you're going to find out whose issues, like what issues are present, not just what you have issues with, but what everybody else is seeing.
Mike and Emers?
I think one of the most important things, steps in organizing your workplace is you have to build some type of like sense of solidarity by like taking the effort to get to know your coworkers, letting them know that like you're there for them in whatever small ways that you can be, and just building a sense of like camaraderie in the workspace.
Okay, and Mike?
And kind of bridging those two together, I mean, it kind of all starts with, you know, a look towards one of your coworkers and saying, you know, hey, this sucks, right? You know, we could probably do something about this. You know, that kind of shared experience goes a long way. People empathize, and you know, when the conversation starts happening, you slowly start to realize, you know, amongst everybody that like this could be much better, and you know, it doesn't have to be like this.
All right, thank you so much. And I also just I actually forgot one quick thing about TVC Office Hours. It is actually open to both members and non-members as well. So if you know any other TVC workers, co-workers in the workplace who might not be union members here, feel free to invite them too. All right, so that's a wrap for today's Union Day. Thank you all for joining. But before we let you go, we actually have a quick thing, which is motion to AWU. So obviously our acronym for the union is AWU, and if you pronounce that, that actually sounds extremely like a wolf howling. So it has been a tradition in this union like that. We will end every meeting with a collective AWU together. So however you want. So please feel free to partake, and please unmute yourself, and let's do that on countdown. 3, 2, 1. All right, thanks everyone for joining us today. Please, and I cannot wait for everybody to go back and think about how to organize your workplace. And again, like if you have any questions, the union is here to help. The union is here to support you. The union is a collective of all of us. So definitely feel free to reach out for help. In any case, hope you have a great rest of your Sunday, and fight on. Bye.